Okay, everybody, here's the episode you have all been waiting for. Everyone has been begging us to keep going on our recap. We did season 1. We weren't sure if we wanted to do season 2. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go through each episode and pick up like certain specific parts and not break down every single episode. But I think we're going to go through season 2 this week.
We're so excited. We've watched it 3 times.
Oh my gosh.
Made tons of notes, and this is our
second recording.
We took a vacation, I guess, for a week and lost our talent of actually recording.
Actually running our equipment.
So we recorded a whole episode with no voice to it.
No audio. Our voice, everything said it was working, and then we went to upload it to YouTube, and it came back with nothing. So here we go again. But and we were so funny on that first round.
We were hilarious. Gosh, we don't know if we can be funny again.
Now I'm like, now this is just freaking repetitive. I don't want to do this one again, but here we go.
So introduce us. We're Notes to Self.
If you don't know who we are, my name's Melanie, born and raised in the AUB. I had 4 mothers and 34 brothers and sisters. I was married at the age of 17, a week into 17, had 3 babies before I was 24, and my dad is the current prophet of the AUB.
I am Corey. I was also born and raised into the AUB. And my dad had 9 wives, and we had 39 children, all growing up on the same compound in 2 homes, one great big home and one little home next to each other. So
that's who we are. If you have any questions about that, go watch our previous videos.
We'll call it crazy. Getting married at 17, but that was norm that was indoctrination. We thought it was normal growing up like that.
Yep. So here we go. We're going to try to do this one again. Yep. It's kind of late here, so you might get the slap happy version this time, which might be a stupider version. Yep. I don't know. So we start up season 2, episode 1, with everybody saying that they're going to send their kids the kids are heading back to school. It's in September. We're estimating that Robin and Cody got married in February, March of earlier that year. They had their wedding reception at the end of May, and now we're in September. Kids are going back to school. Yep. So Robin starts out by saying some of the dumbest stuff, but here she goes. I know, so you can tell I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to do this recording again. But she talks about how she had to keep her polygamous life secret, and she couldn't talk about it. So nobody in her school knew that she was a polygamist. And I'm like, of course not, because your mom moved and you didn't even have polygamous siblings that lived by you. So there was no reason that she would need to bring it up. She talks about all the suppression and all of this, victimhood that she had growing up, and she really didn't, because her mom didn't even live in the same city as her other mom. There's no way she would have gone to school with her siblings. I went to public school, and I went to public school with some of my siblings. So yes, I have a sister 4 hours older than me, and we went to school together. So people really did ask us who we were.
And I didn't. I went to school in the community school and graduated the community high school, and then went and got my GED equivalent once I had finished that.
Yeah. So. And if people in the school didn't know who you were, that's really sad, because that would be your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, we were kind of homeschooled. Yeah. Most of my teachers were my parents, or there were a couple teachers that were other kids' parents that were going there. So.
Right. So they start joking about some of it's funny to watch in these first couple of episodes how they make fun of the different verbiage. Polygamists have their own verbiage, their own words that they use, and they call themselves pliglets. So they're little pliglets that are going to school. We still call ourselves pliglets. Or their brother, husband, sister, wives. Like there's this whole language that people use.
Yeah, secret language within the community to snicker about.
To laugh about, yeah. So I thought it was interesting that Mary's child decided not to go back to public school. She wanted to stay in the private school. The AUB does have their own school that they teach from. Mary's mom ran that school.
Yeah.
And so
that would make sense, because that was her grandmother running the school.
Right.
And so she wasn't going, she was staying within the education system that she had always been a part of. And so
And one of Corey's theories about Cody says right on there that they were trying to integrate the kids together, and Robin's kids have always gone to public school. So,
yeah. And so I think Cody was like, "Oh, good. We'll send all the other children to public school too, because it's how it helps the family merge and become more integrated."
And since that's what Robin already does, let's have the whole family uproot what they already do and do what Robin already does.
And I'm just guessing that it was probably a communication. Yeah, I understand you're sending the other kids to the private school, but my kids will be, I don't want to throw them, which, yeah, this is going to be rare. I'm agreeing with Robin that, hey, those kids had been going to public school, probably had friends. So, although she moved them up, so probably didn't.
Yeah, so I don't.
It was just something. It was just something she was going to send her kids to public school, which is probably
maybe she just didn't have confidence
in the private school.
The private school is definitely. I feel like public school and private schools like that, the kids come out better educated. The public schools are just too overcrowded. You know, Janelle talks about how they have great schools out where they live. And so I think that's awesome. Christine talks about her siblings being bullied in school. I did not experience that in my high school, but I have heard of other polygamous kids having that experience because people knew who they were and knew that they were going to school together. So that, you know, that is a very real thing that happens to kids that go. I thought another thing that was funny was, well, they were talking about filling out the emergency contact, and Janelle fills it out as aunts, and then Christine's like, "Oh, that's such a stab," and Christine finally gets to fill it out as other mother. I just think that is way over dramatized for TV. Nobody really cares. Wow, you fill out your emergency form, and we always called our other mothers aunts. And so we would say Aunt so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so, but we always called our siblings brothers and sisters. We didn't call them step brothers and sisters. We didn't call them step or anything like that. They were just our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. A lot of times I didn't know that there was a difference. These were all my brothers and sisters growing up. I knew they had a different mother, but we called them brother and sister. So, but I will, as I talk about my family in the future, I'll try to point out, because I had 5 little brothers and then a little sister, but I had a whole bunch of family. My older brother, but he was my older stepbrother, came from a different mother. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to, because I just didn't ever refer to my siblings as step siblings. They weren't siblings. They weren't step siblings to me. They were my siblings. And so we've had a couple complaints about people not understanding some of that when we don't use the word step. And sorry, that's just the way we were raised. Everyone was siblings. We didn't distinguish between you're a step sibling and you're not. Or you're my real sibling and you're my step sibling. We didn't do that in our family. Cool. The rest of we always called each other just brothers and sisters. So we did. So I thought that was funny. They kind of over dramatized they're the other mother. I think Janelle's so funny because she's just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I think Janelle comes back to reality when the Browns try to sensationalize something, or TLC tries to sensationalize something for TV. Janelle comes right back to, yeah, I'm not doing that. Right. So what?
Yeah, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing in the first place. So.
Right. And the private school out there is a co-op between other parents. A bunch of other parents teach out there. I taught out there when I was 18 years old. I taught out there for a year and actually got my homeschooling certification. Mary's mom helped me get that. And so I think that, you know, they do have a very good school system out there. I'm not sure why they would want to pull their kids out and put them in public school, but I think it's just kind of a way to put them out into the public. I think for me, I never would have done that because I would have wanted to make sure that my kids weren't facing that public scrutiny. Oh, you guys are on TV. I wouldn't have wanted my kids to have to experience that. So I would have just kept them in the private school. I don't know why they made that choice. I thought it was funny. The kids all come home from school. They're all excited. They want to tell little Christine. I thought it was interesting that Logan just comes right downstairs and is like, hey, do you have food in your house? I'm hungry. And Christine's like, yep, we had hamburgers. So it just really goes to show the cohesiveness of the families and how the children really did belong to each one of the moms. And now you've got Robin separate in her apartment or her house or whatever. So I think it's really interesting to see Christine really is the center focal point of the family, to the point where the kids are in her home. They're eating, they're being fed. So I really, really appreciated seeing that side of Christine, and especially where Janelle, I mean, this is going to be a term for the old timers. There was a terminology called latchkey kids, where you basically, you know, they would joke about like you had a lanyard with your house key on it and you would take that to school. We had to do that. We were considered latchkey kids because my mom worked all the time. And so we went home to an empty house and we parented ourselves until our mom got home from work. And so that is one of the upsides of polygamy, is that you always have a mother available or someone to help take care of the children.
And we never even had a lock on our doors until later on in life. Front door was never locked. So, because we grew up in a community
on the mountain, away from away from the major parts of society.
Yeah. Well, you would just
that way kids could come in and out if they needed to from one house to the next.
Somebody was always moving in and out of the house. So
right. Where I didn't have that. Nope. We were definitely considered latchkey kids.
My parents have a lock on the homes now. They installed those. I don't remember ever
locking your doors,
having a door locked growing up. So
well, and that's what I like about the flow of the big house that they show on the Browns, is the kids really can go from section to section, and be wherever they need to be nurtured. And so I think that's really amazing. And then they talk about, I thought it was interesting because we're not, one of the things Corey and I have always talked about in polygamy is that the kids are the collateral damage. They're the ones that get hurt in this situation. They're the ones that, like, their opinions don't matter most of the time. And so it was really refreshing and nice to see on this episode, to see Cody actually say, this is the last day that we're going to be a family before we go public. So they are all going to ice blocking at the park. And I thought that was really like wise of him to bring his family together before they became a national, shit show. Yeah. And so it's very, very conscious of them in their parenting. But ice blocking is something that we have done my entire life. And the park that it looks like that they went to is the park that we always went to growing up too. It's right by Christine's family compound. Christine's family had like a compound type thing too. And this park was right there by there. And we would go ice blocking there all the time growing up. Did you guys do ice blocking in Montana?
We didn't.
I've asked you this question once already.
We grew up in Montana where 6 months out of the year it was snow on the ground. And so no, we went tubing. You had old inner tubes from tires that we went tubing in the winter time. Yeah, we didn't have grass either. We grew up in the woods. So yeah, we didn't ice block. No, we tubed when we were kids or got pulled behind a snowmobile or something like that.
Well, that would have been
that was fun.
That would have been fun.
Yeah. So, but no, we never. Yeah, I didn't know what ice blocking was till I moved
Utah is considered, I think we're the second driest state in the union. So we've got Nevada above us. So we would always go ice blocking here in Utah. And you get a frozen bum by the time you're done. You get a wet frozen bum. And it actually can be a little dangerous. I've seen some broken legs. I've seen some broken arms, because it does get very competitive when you're doing it. One of the things that I noticed, and I noticed this a lot with Robin, she puts those little slivers in them. And the reason that we call them slivers is because they're little tiny sayings or things that she does that you at surface level might not look harmful. But after it sits in there and it starts to fester and starts to get infected, it can cause a real issue. And so that's why we call them slivers. And I felt like Robin was doing a sliver when she comments with, and it's really how she does us versus them. It's how she makes herself superior to other people. Is she comes off with, well, our kids have really high morals and really high standards. So we have to come up with different activities that our kids can do so that that align with our high morals and our high standards and our high, what was the other word?
Ethics.
And,
high morals and ethics.
Yeah.
And so, yet,
go ahead.
Yet do they? So yeah, reassuring the public, reassuring the community, reassuring everybody that's listening that they have high morals and ethics. So it's a good reassurance. We've been told our whole life that we're a beacon or a light upon the hill. We have high morals and high ethics, and no, they're normal people. They hide their lack thereof. So really worked on it in my adult life to try to tell the truth and get those high morals and ethics that we were told. And they're saying, I don't know, so many things within the AUB and within our teachings are sins, and you have to avoid them and stay away from them. And so those high moral and high ethics are these sins that they're talking about that we're trying to avoid, and they're just normal day life, raising kids and stuff like that. So
I thought that comment
swearing
was so far out of context about what they were even doing. Like ice blocking gives you high morals and high standards and high ethics. Like, it didn't make any sense. But that's just one of the little slivers that she puts out there that makes her better than other people. And I love it when she's like, yeah, our teenagers. And so she's just already coming in like ownership of the whole family, ownership of the teenage. Like, this is what we've always done. So I just found that part a little bit interesting, because I would be really surprised if Robin let her kids do that dangerous of an activity without being around the Browns first.
Yeah. Well, and I think she's trying to reassure us from season 1 that they have high morals, and they would never do anything that you Gentiles or anybody looking at watching the show would have
assumed that they were doing while they were courting.
Questioned our high morals and ethics.
Yeah.
So she's just reassuring all of us of that. She's above us.
So I just thought it was funny. So I'm gonna keep pointing out those little slivers that I noticed that she does throughout the show. Then another thing that they're talking about it on the couch, and they're talking about how they're going to New York the next day. They're talking about they're going to be public. Everyone's going to know who they are. They're talking about what do they do? They're hoping people follow their example. They're hoping people see that, how open they're being about polygamy, and they hope that people will start to accept them.
What's the oldest son's name again? Logan. And so Logan makes a statement in here too that his parents are going off. And so they're either getting pushed off a cliff or choosing to jump. And I guess we're jumping. And so it is one of those things. I resonate more with Logan because that's how I grew up, that there was really no choice. You can either go along or you can be pushed off. This was a decision that was made without probably any of the kids' input. And so they're just moving along. So this is where I kind of feel for the kids again. They are being filmed. So being put out there probably without their input. And I notice later on when Logan does have the choice or chooses to make the choice, he doesn't get filmed anymore. He chooses to be off camera. So good for him.
So I feel like the Browns made a couple of different attempts to make the kids a priority in here. But as we've seen, based on the future, what we know is happening, that, this was probably very detrimental to a lot of these kids to go through this experience. One of the things is they're getting ready the next day to go. And one of the scenes is Robin is in the bathroom getting ready. And she's talking about saying that she had to guard everything she said growing up. She had to guard all of the, she couldn't let anyone know who she was, and that she was tired of guarding her language, that she wanted to be able to speak freely and openly, which I found very interesting because she didn't live in the same state as, yes, Robin was very much born in the AB or part of the AB and very much grew up in a polygamous lifestyle, but she really didn't have to contend that hard with other kids to where there was never really, and maybe there was, and I'm unaware of that, but it seems like she lived in a city on her own with her mom and her mom's kids, not with the other wife or the other wife's kids, not from her bio dad and not from her stepdad. Neither one of they all never lived in the same city. So how did she have to guard what she said? Nobody would know she was from a polygamous family, not like Christine did or Janelle or Mary did, not like we had to. We had to guard what we were saying, because I didn't do a very good job guarding it because I just mostly just blurted it out. But for the most part, I don't understand where Robin felt like she had to do that. And so she was just saying how she's hoping that by bringing polygamy public, it will show people that it's not all about child brides and welfare fraud and abuse. And based on, now that we're 19 seasons in, I don't know that they actually achieved what they set out to do, because now we're seeing the abuse. We're talking about the abuse that we've suffered. I was 8 days into 17 when I got married, and I don't know how many people would consider that a child. I certainly would never allow my girls to get married a week into 17.
Or boys.
Yeah, I know, or
Any
boys, but I don't know very many boys that do it. In polygamy, it's the young girls. It's not the 17-year-old boys. It's the 16, 17-year-old girls that are getting married. I mean, I was engaged at 16 for 6 months and then got married a week after I turned 17. And then the welfare fraud. I think the biggest thing, we have tried to give charity and, grace to people, because I hate being clumped into an entire, everyone in the AUB goes on to welfare fraud. Well, that's just not true. Not everyone does. Most people are afraid of the government. But does it happen?
Absolutely.
I'm sure it does. Does it happen?
I'm sure it does.
I'm sure it happens a lot. But it's also not fair to clump a group of people together and say, oh, because they're in the AUB, everyone does this. Everyone does child's brides. Everyone does welfare fraud. Everyone does abuse. Abuse is very, very rampant. Yes, I would say 9 out of 10 people, gosh, that's even a low number. I'd say 9.9 out of 10 people suffer abuse in this religion of some sort. But not everybody does welfare fraud. Not everybody does child brides. So that's why I just don't like to clump all of that together. But I just thought that was interesting that she points that out. And then based on 19 seasons later, I feel like we're seeing the abuse that she has implemented onto this family. We're seeing the abuse that.
Yeah, it might not be physical, but there's definitely a lot of emotional
and spiritual
that
and
we grew up
mental
with.
Yeah.
But physically, yes, too. So
yeah.
Definitely there.
They're all getting ready to go to New York. I think it's awesome. This is one of the advantages of polygamy, is the grandmas all come in to help. And I've talked about my grandmas. Because we don't always use stepsister, stepbrother, stepfather, step whatever. I just have always referred to them as my grandmas because that's how I grew up. And I had 5 grandmas, and so it was I love the fact that there's always somebody to help with the children. There's always, and that is one of the biggest advantages of this lifestyle. Now, whether the children came out unscathed from being babysat by someone else, that's a whole different story, because there's a lot of abuse that happens when, one sister wife leaves out of town and the other sister wife's watching their children. There's a lot of abuse that happens with that kind of scenario too. Grandmas, I think for the most part, are pretty safe, but there's been a lot of child abuse when one woman is angry or hates another woman and she takes it out on her children.
That definitely happens. It happens.
I was like, Corey knows that firsthand. So I thought it was interesting when they talk about, Corey's used the terminology. I don't use that terminology very often, but Corey does, where he talks about the big scary world. I thought it was funny that the Browns actually use that exact terminology when they get to New York. They're talking about, oh my gosh, this is the big scary world.
She lived in the big scary world. You lived among, you did. We were so sheltered. We were extremely sheltered growing up. So,
and yet you're the one who taught me half of the.
I learned very quickly to be a heathen.
I never even got drunk until I hung out with Corey. My first drunk episode was with Corey. So yeah, you learned.
I was a quick learner.
Yeah, you clearly were. So I thought it was funny. They get on the Today Show. They're talking to Meredith, and I find it interesting that they're all having their own individual experience, although they're supposed to be a collective energy as a unit and as a whole. And so I think that is interesting to watch, how I can see a little bit of, do I look better than her? Is my makeup done a little bit better than hers? Is my hair done a little bit better? I can see some of that going on with some of the wives. And so I think that's interesting to watch that. Not saying that is exactly what happened, but in this lifestyle, you always want to look better than your sister wife. You always want to be on your game better than your sister wife, because I don't know, he could choose her over you. So what do you say?
Well, I just thought it was interesting when Cody turned it over to God. Glitch all the time. Sometimes I sit here and talk, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, where was I going on that? But he turned it over to God. As the priesthood holder, he should have been sitting there and made a direct connection and got inspiration, but his communication on the show there between him and God as the priesthood holder got a little glitch in it. And he was like,
Meredith asks him a question. He's like, bleh, and then he just looks at Janelle. Janelle, what's the answer to this?
Yeah.
So I thought
That's
that was,
awesome.
yeah, I thought that was really interesting. But they wanted to get up there and show that they were a solid, happy family. And they were a solid, happy family in polygamy. And I fully believe that before Robin came into the family, they were. And did they have their issues? Absolutely. But it wasn't their everyday life for the most part seemed happy, at least from the outside. It seemed very functional. It seemed very happy. I'm sure that they had moments.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt that they had moments that were hard or that people wanted to quit and wanted to leave.
Well, and the other thing we were kind of discussing before too is there were multiple reasons taking the show that they had to be worried about. There's the bigamy, exposing themselves to the public, but also their community was kind of against them doing that.
Right.
And so as the news cameras are coming out, as the paparazzi are coming out, the one thing we kind of were explaining was they were in a polygamous community. Those houses on the left and the right of them are polygamous homes too.
Oh, you're jumping back to, oh yeah. So
did we already?
No, we haven't covered that part yet. No, you're good. We're still in New York while they're on the Today Show.
Oh, yeah.
While they're doing
but they were worried
tour.
about going on there because now they're exposing it.
Right. And so the Browns lived in a country, it was considered the country. Now it's very much developed, but at the time it was really quiet road. And there were several other polygamous families that lived there. And so if you notice on any of the videos, you'll see a huge house on one side, a huge house on the other. Those are other polygamous families. And they lived in kind of a little, I think there's 3 or 4 houses on that street. In fact, the prophet at the time, when they filmed this, that was one of his houses and his wives and some of his children that lived there. So I'm sure that was even more, but we'll get more into that when we get a little bit farther. Corey.
Oh, sorry. I jumped ahead.
No, you're good because we've already recorded this one. So we forget what we recorded. But one of the things when they were on their media tour, they went to meet with Joy Bear. And one of the things that Joy jokes about is being Cody's 5th wife. And one of the things I can totally see the leadership just being furious about this because they're taking these very sacred things, these very holy covenants that they believe are very sacred. And there is the scripture out there that says, don't cast your pearls before swine. This would be considered casting your pearls before swine because she's making light about, joking about being Cody's 5th wife when, she's obviously not interested in this in any way, but I can see the leadership just being so upset about that comment and being exactly why they told them not to go public, because these are very sacred covenants and very sacred promises. And they consider it to be very sacred and holy. And this just makes a mockery of it and makes it a joke.
Because in their belief system, Joy would never have been allowed to be a 5th wife because she was not a part of the community.
She's too worldly.
So she would never be allowed to be a 5th wife and go through their ceremony.
Right. So I thought I even kind of gasped a little bit when Joy's like, can I be your 5th wife? And you can kind of see Cody do a little flinch, like, that's not really funny. That's not really a joke. That's not something that they would normally joke about. So then all the wives decide they want to go to Central Park, and they're in New York. They want to go to Central Park. They're all going to go and take some pictures. And I thought the couch scene on this particular section of the show was actually very interesting because Cody's explaining Mary's the photographer. So Janelle and Christine have a lot of really great photos, but Mary had, Christine's not a photographer, so Mary doesn't have a lot of great photos. If you're watching Robin's body language and her facial expressions during this couch interview, she's angry. She's pissed. She's sitting there in a group that she doesn't quite belong to yet. She doesn't quite fit in with. And so especially like if you're a girl and you've ever gone to a sleepover and you're not quite as in on the other, the inside jokes as the other people are, and you feel like you're left out. That's what I was experiencing watching Robin. She was left out because the family has literally had, 17 years together without Robin. And so they have established patterns and established family dynamics. And she's just sitting there like she's on the outside of this. And I could see she felt really bad. And that is one of the things that they say when you're doing podcasting is don't tell inside jokes, because your general audience needs to feel included in that. And I feel like this is kind of one of those situations where Cody's trying to explain something that's very funny to him, but to Robin, not
and to
funny
the
at
other
all.
3 wives, yeah.
Right. And so Robin is definitely
not inclusive.
No, she's chalking that up as well. That's one thing I'm going to be pissed off about at him later, because you need to talk about things that include me too.
Mm-hmm. We're a full family of
right.
5 people now, and you're talking about the 4 of you guys doing pictures.
Right.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. And honestly, I really wasn't looking forward to doing season 2, but these are the moments that make me want to watch season 2, because we haven't watched it. We haven't watched season 2 through season 18. And so
just bits and pieces.
Right. Just bits and like little social media clips here and there. But this is actually very interesting, because you're seeing Robin try to integrate into a club that she hasn't been a part of for 17 years. And they all have a good banter and they all have good laughter. And while they're in the park going, and Mary's trying to take pictures, you can see Robin in the background with her arms folded. Her body language is so angry because Christine's like, or she's like, you always do this. And Christine's like, no, you, and they're bantering back and forth and they're having this lightheartedness. And that is one of the things that you will see with Sister Wives. I appreciate that banter and that lightheartedness, because they joke around. And as long as nothing gets too serious, they can joke around and have a good time with all the wives and Cody there. But it just takes that one comment that sets somebody over the edge, or and I feel like watching this scene in Central Park, it's Robin that's going to get sent over the edge, because they're all goofing around and bantering, but Robin's not there yet. She's not in the club fully. She doesn't have the memories that they have. So anyway, I thought that was a really interesting part.
She might have the Cotter ring, but she's not really in the club yet.
Yeah, because Mary did say that. We wanted to welcome you to the club, but it's hard when you're the last man in, and there's already such an established history and pattern, and she doesn't know her place. Where does she belong? She doesn't know where she belongs yet.
But she's quickly changing it.
She quickly changed it. Yes, we do know that. Yeah. And so then one of the things that the Browns did say towards the end about going public is that they wanted to know, will their own community accept them? Will the public accept them? Are they literally creating themselves to be outcasts for everywhere they go? Even, in polygamy, there's a lot of different sects that, you've got the Kingstons, you've got the FLDS, you've got the AUB, and there's a bunch of little smaller ones too. And then you have a lot of independent, we call them independent polygamists. They don't follow a certain church. And so,
leader.
The Browns have a lot of friends like that, like like Joe Darger. And so you have to wonder, how are all these people going to respond with us going public? And so I think that it was very wise of them to consider that and worry about that, because they're pissing a lot of people off by going public.
Especially in this episode, there's a point where he's packing his bags, and you can see him with rolled up garments within his bags. The AUB, people within the AUB would probably consider that not acceptable.
Blasphemous.
Yeah, those should have been
out there in front of the public.
Exactly. That's on recording, and those people within it can see those things. Probably everybody outside's not aware of it, but yeah, he has rolled up garments right there. As
he's packing his suitcase for New York. It looks like they're in a Ziploc bag. And that's how I used to, I didn't put mine in a Ziploc bag, but that's exactly how I used to roll mine and put them in my drawer.
And this is where they are worried probably about, now that they're coming public, there are certain things that I don't think they were aware of, and that is those people filming on the street. I can guarantee those families were upset that news media was out there filming their house. They have got kids running around.
They have to keep their kids inside. They don't want their kids on TMZ or anything like that. So then that is one of the things I do. Another point of the Browns, hey, we got to get back home. Oh, we didn't talk about I want to talk about that part, because we talked about it in the last video that we recorded. But one of the things that I had mentioned in the last video is the fact that they had to have at least spent one night in New York City. And so I'm always curious, how do they do the sleeping arrangements at that point? Because this is a huge experience for them all to experience. And at night, when they decompress and they're laying their heads on their pillows, who's Cody going to be talking to? Is he going to be like, oh, I need to analyze what happened and I need to like dissect what happened. So Janelle, come and, I'm going to stay with Janelle. Or is he going to be like, that was such a fun, awesome day. I'm going to talk about all the fun things we did. Let me go stay with Christine. Or is he going to talk about the scheduling and the preparing and getting everything done? So I'm going to go stay with Mary. Or am I going to talk about all the ways that these people on TV victimized me? So now I'm going to go stay with Robin. And so
that's so good.
So it's like, how does he make that decision who to sleep with? Or did TLC buy them each their own room? Did they buy conjoining rooms where they all stayed together? So these are the things that, I always think about these things because that is one thing that people would say all the time. Do your parents all sleep together? No, they don't. And, we'd go camping and we had a cabin, and in the main area, my parents would put mattresses down, the air mattresses, but there was always toddlers and nursing babies and all the parents that would sleep in this ginormous bed in the middle of the house that was wide open for everybody. There was no hanky-panky going on there. And so I think it's interesting. These are my thoughts when I watch a polygamous family do something like this, because this is a huge experience. Who's he going to share that night with to decompress? Because when it's just Corey and I, like, we go to bed and we're like, oh my gosh, this is what we did. This is what happened. What did you think about this? What did you think about that? But what if you're just that woman and you're in this massive experience and you get to go home and you're going to go to your hotel and go to bed alone? Like, that's so crappy. And so, I was curious about that. And I noticed in there, I thought from what I saw, he packed 3 pairs of garments. So I'm wondering if they stayed there for 3 days. So he might have had 2 nights where he could have shared that experience, but who doesn't get to share that with him? I don't know. So these are the things that make my brain turn, because how does he make that decision? How does he make that fair? And how does he make that decision? And how do you not get hurt if the decision isn't you?
Yeah. What if you didn't get to talk about your victimhood?
Right. So now we're back. So now they want to get back home because they're concerned. So this is another thing we were saying, that we're happy to see the Browns are concerned about their children, because it feels like, because we haven't seen these seasons, in season 19, it doesn't feel like they're that concerned. They're worried about getting a good shot or getting something on video more so than they're concerned about the welfare of the children. And that could be a harsh judgment on my end.
Probably is, but it's interesting. It sounds like that they're looking for what's in the best interest of all the children.
Right.
The last season I saw, he was just interested in the 2 youngest children's welfare.
So that is really hard to watch, because we have said this from day one of filming and coming live and coming out public, that children are the collateral damage in this religion. And it's so disheartening, and it breaks our hearts when we watch this happen. So I was really glad to see them say, we got to get back home, because this is going to start hitting the tabloids. This is going to start hitting the online gossip column. I mean, people talking about it just like we're talking about it now. And so I was really grateful to see him want to get home to his kids. What are you laughing at?
Just those kids are starting to read people talking about them, talking about the family. So well,
and even like Maddie, they get home and Maddie's like, I read some of it and finally had to turn it off. Like, I can't imagine how hard that must have been. And then now we're at where the paparazzi's in the front yard.
I can't imagine that either, because everybody's been so nice to me.
You're so dumb. You're so dumb in a very nice way. I love you. That's what I meant to say. And so then they're just talking about like the paparazzi being in front of the houses and the school buses dropping the children off. And, I would be upset if I was another polygamous family and I knew that my kids were going to be subjected to all these cameras everywhere. How do you get away from that? You can't. They're on a public street. They can do whatever they want.
Paparazzi doesn't know what kids are out in the front street playing. It
they don't know. Are they the Brown kids? Or are they
or some other kids down the road? So
So
and they probably had friends within the neighborhood too that now don't get to hang around with them because these guys are always being filmed. So there's a whole bunch of those kids probably had to go through in the beginning of this
going public, and and I'm sure that they realized there would be repercussions, but maybe just not the extent of the repercussions of going public, especially because they're out in the country. Like, there's nothing around them. Cameras and trucks start showing up. That's a big thing. You notice that, because there's no way to avoid it because you're out in the middle of nowhere. So
And then the police are looking to investigate.
Yeah.
So police cars are going down there, and they were talking about the kids reporting in their police cars. I'm guaranteeing neighbors were reporting that in and being frustrated too. So
I'm sure there was a lot. It was a community fallout. It wasn't just for a fallout for the Browns. It's a community.
Yeah, the community probably pulled way back from them at that point. So
well, and then they get together for a family meeting, and I thought it was pretty ballsy because I thought that family meeting was just more of a scare tactic. Hey, everyone's going to know who you are. You can't just trust anyone who comes up and says, oh, hey, I'm your mom's friend. You're so-and-so Brown. And so I thought it was pretty ballsy on Robin's end because she's just throwing her like 2 cents into this family that she's been around for 30 seconds. And all of a sudden she's like telling these teenagers and telling these kids what they need to do and how they need to respond to this. And so, yeah, I'm really surprised at her level of ballsiness.
Well, she's the authority on the Gentiles and the worldly ways, and so she knows that this family's been raised kind of sheltered, and so she's there as the authority figure.
Oh my gosh.
And I will be informing everybody here about how the world is going to treat you now.
If I was Janelle or Christine, I'd been like, sit down. We've got this.
We'll talk to our kids.
Hopefully these mothers talk to their children outside of this family meeting. I know Robin did. I mean, there's no way Robin didn't, but hopefully Janelle and Christine talked to him because I remember those types of family meetings that were just one huge scare tactic. Let's scare the shit out of these kids into compliance so that they do what we want them to do. And that's what that meeting kind of felt like to me.
So that they're checking in with the parents too, which is good, but yeah, it is a scare tactic. That's how we grew up. Everything was a scare tactic. Every family meeting was some sort of scare tactic. I mean, I'm a grown adult now, and when I get called into an office, we'd have a meeting. I'm like, he's like, oh, why? What are we getting in trouble for?
What did I do?
But I'm like,
nothing. We just need to talk about this.
We just
make a decision.
So
yeah, the family meetings things, we hate them. I just think Robin is ballsy as hell to get in there and throw her 2 cents in. Like, she's raised teenagers before. She doesn't know. So then we're at the final couch scene and they're all talking about, Mary's crying and she's talking about how the judgments and the gossip, and Janelle's like, the gossip, hey, I have no problem if someone wants to know something, just say it to my face, just come and ask me personally. And obviously we all know that doesn't work that way. And when you are on TV, you're not going to take everybody's phone call. You're not going to take everybody's email. There's just no way you're going to do that. And so people are going to talk about what they assume or what they think is happening, just like what we're doing here. And so I think it's interesting. Mary's sobbing. It's funny because now I guarantee you that Mary has that same conversation. There's not a tear in her head about it. But back then it was like, I feel like we never had the opportunity to express our emotions truly or honestly. And so they're always right here. And then something happens and then they bubble over and you start crying because you just never fully got to discuss your emotions or how you felt. And so here she's
push them down.
Yeah, you just suppress everything because that's what a good sister wife would do. And so here she's bawling her head off saying, would I do this again? Would I go public again? And she says, yes, I would go public again. And I'm curious as to what she would say now, because I feel like the only person who kind of has any level head on their shoulders about this is Christine. Because then Christine is over here like, I don't know. I don't think I would do it again. I don't know if I would do it again. And Janelle's like, yes, I would do it again. Robin's like, absolutely, I'd do it again so that my kids didn't have to live in suppression like I did. Oh, she had to live in suppression.
Well, and the one thing that I agreed with Christine on when they were at the news thing is that she did make a statement that raising children in a closed and secret society is damaging. It really is.
It's dangerous. That's where
it attracts so many predators, abuses, things like that. And so if they wanted to get out there and say, hey, this is normal, I support them in that. It should be all kids growing up in polygamy should know that there's a safe place to go if they need help, and that people aren't judging them on the outside. So they're willing to help. They're willing to love them, so that if kids are afraid which you are afraid growing up. You're scared. There's parents are trying to do what they can do, but they need a place to be able to come out and feel that it's safe to come out and complain if there's horrendous things going on. Right. So you're not getting married at 17 or 16 or 14. And so,
yeah. So I do agree with Christine in that regard, that that the communities need to be more open because they do breed predators.
Yeah. If the society was more open, I feel like that those predators wouldn't thrive as well as they do within those
and there
communities.
Is so much abuse that happens in these closed societies. It's just disgusting. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Absolutely. So this is our recap of episode. Now we're of season 2, episode 1. We're not going to pick apart every single episode. We're going to kind of go through them and pick out the highlights of what we think. What we see in different episodes. So we might even combine 3 or 4, 2 or 3, whatever. Just depends on how many pages of notes we get while we're doing it. So let us know in the comments what you think of the review. We'll probably try to we busted out season 1 in a week, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Like 10 days or something like that. We'll probably do season 2 in the same amount of time. We've had other stuff going on, so we haven't produced.
Been away for a week.
Well, yeah, but we've been doing other things. Like we went to the Holding Out Help convention or gala and stuff like that, which we'll do some videos on that as well. We've been processing through a lot of emotion for the last week, watching some of the abuses that have happened. So let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know if you have any questions. We are also going to start doing a series where some of you guys are asking like these really great questions, but they're just too hard to respond to in text on YouTube. So what we're going to do is keep those comments, and we're going to make videos on them, and we're going to just do a Q&A video where it's not live. We're just answering all your questions. And so watch for that too, because if your question's on there, so leave us questions below. Let us know what you think, and we will see you on episode 2.
All right. See you guys.